Samsung's second Galaxy Fold is now literally on the horizon, and it's looking so good that it might just be a day one switch from me. Here are the top 6 reasons why, as well as 2 things that have me pretty worried. The original Galaxy Fold, what I've been using for a month now, is a book, a phone that folds out horizontally to make one large tablet display. The Fold 2 is looking like it's going to be a clamshell, a phone that starts out smaller and folds out vertically to make a normal sized phone, and that's a really good thing. It'll mean a device that's far less bulky, but more importantly, one that solves the aspect ratio problem. See, with the book form factor, if you've got 2 halves that are quite tall, folding them outwards is going to result in basically a square, and a square is just not good for 90% of content. Movies, games, and most phone apps are designed to work on rectangular displays. With a clamshell though, as we've seen with the new Motorola Razr, you can have a small squarish screen on the front, and that's fine because the main screen on the inside will be tall, a little taller than we're used to, but that's far better than being too wide. Android Authority recently did a poll on people's favorite foldable, and the Motorola Razr got about twice as many votes as the Galaxy Fold. People like the clamshell design of the Razr, and even of that group of people who picked the Galaxy Fold, some of them only did so just because it's a better spec'd phone. If you think about it, the Galaxy Fold 2 should have the best of both worlds, the clamshell design of the Razr, and quite possibly even better specs than the original Fold. Also, this is a subtle point, but I think the clamshell is something that has a better chance of taking off, sales-wise, because people are already subconsciously familiar with the concept. 15 years ago, nobody would have even questioned what the purpose of a flip phone was. It was accepted, and so if Samsung can come in with the flip phone reinvented, I think it's an easier sell than welcome to the book for, reading. Then we've got One UI 2, Samsung's terribly named but beautifully redesigned bit of software, which is going to help all of their phones, but in particular this foldable. You've got standard all-round improvements like less intrusive notifications, and even smarter dark mode that works across more applications, and just generally more customization. But a big focus here has been reachability. If we are going to see this super tall display on the inside of the next Fold, this update couldn't have come at a better time. It'll bring all of those UI elements your fingers actually need to interact with closer to the bottom to reduce the amount of reaching you need to do. You might already know the current Galaxy Fold uses a plastic display. After all, when glass gets super thin, it loses a lot of its structural strength, and just generally as a material, glass is not very bend friendly. But it looks like Samsung has found a way. A local glass supplier called Dolnsees, I think, has supposedly developed a solution that is ultra slim, durable, and flexible, so this could be big. One of the primary criticisms of the first Fold is its display. It scratches easily, and it's got this massive crease going down the middle. Now, I never personally thought it was a deal breaker. I got used to the crease pretty quickly, but every time I show this phone to someone else, it's one of the first things they point out, so that kind of speaks for itself. Anyway, this glass solution could solve both scratching and creasing problems at once. A lot of these reports I've been reading are pointing towards the display size on the Fold 2 being 6.7 inches. That's great. In my experience, with current phone thickness and bezel size, this is about as big as you can go while still being usable. But I could see why this is not a benefit to everyone. You could argue that there is something special about being able to carry around a 7+ inch display in that smaller form factor. It'll probably also be a hole punch screen, not a full uninterrupted panel, and this will save some thickness versus having to use a motorized pop-up for the front camera. But speaking of cameras, the actual camera hardware on these Samsung flagships, it hasn't had a major push since the Galaxy S7. Samsung has kind of favored design improvements over camera upgrades. That's about to change in 2020. According to code found in the Samsung camera app, they're already working on a phone that can shoot not just 8K video, but 108 megapixel photos. And this would line up perfectly with past leaks, but also the fact that Samsung has actually launched a 108 megapixel sensor. It's already a very real thing. Assuming then that the next Fold will still be positioned as a high-end device, there's a good chance it's going to benefit from this too. Also, if you just count the number of cameras on the original Fold, you get 6 cameras, and at any one time you're only ever using a maximum of 3. You've got 1 selfie camera for when you're using the front screen, 2 selfie cameras for when you're using the main screen, and 3 cameras at the back. It's just a bit inefficient. They've effectively built the same camera system twice just so you can take selfies in both folded and unfolded positions, which increases cost and thickness. If they can find a way on this new Fold to have just 1 camera system that you can use to take selfies while the phone is folded, and then rear photos while unfolded, that would be game changing. It would mean they could pour their entire resource pool into just 1 set of cameras, instead of scattering their resources over 3 sets. And that you can take not just mind-blowing rear shots, but also selfies with the same quality. And speaking of quality, I'm really trying to up the game on YouTube, so if you could subscribe, that would be amazing. Now, it's looking like the second Galaxy Fold is not going to be a traditional successor, and in fact, instead of going up in price, Samsung is supposedly coming down. If I had to guess, I'd say around $1,500 compared to $2,000 for this one. There were a whole number of reports about this recently, but the one thing I did notice which backs it up is the fact that the codename of the second Fold was leaked as being SMF700, which if true suggests it would fit below the existing SMF900 Fold. Because this is such a new category of devices, it's very possible that Samsung is still figuring out where the Fold fits in its lineup. I can say one thing for sure, at $2,000 there is no way the original Fold was shipping at high volume numbers. And so considering the incredible amount of R&D that would have gone into making this thing, there's a good chance that the company's current foldable ventures are running at a loss. Of course, it'll only take one hit product to turn all of that around, and the Fold 2 could very well be the one. And what makes me especially hopeful is that Samsung have been in this situation before. Their original Galaxy S was seen by many people as just a cheap iPhone alternative, but the Galaxy S2 that came next cemented its place as a true rival. Samsung's first curved phone, the Galaxy Round, was a complete flop, but it paved the way for their future curved endeavors, which, whilst not universally loved, have been a big hit. The company has kind of developed a reputation for bouncing back. Okay, two things I am worried about, and I'm not talking about things like a lack of a headphone jack or lack of water resistance. I think these things are pretty major. First of all, as I mentioned, it's very likely Samsung will make the Fold 2 a cheaper phone, but it still needs to have the absolute best specifications. It's got to have the latest chipset, it's got to have plenty of RAM. We already expect this stuff from normal flagships, and so what I'm saying is that this flexible form factor can't come at the cost of performance. Now, the reason I am particularly worried about this is because Motorola clearly thinks that it can. They've released a phone that looks a lot like what Samsung has planned, but they've opted for some really underwhelming hardware, a Snapdragon 710 chip, 128GB of non-expandable storage, and a 5-megapixel selfie camera. The second thing is battery. There's going to be a massive trade-off here, because I have no doubt that if this thing does eventually come out, the way Samsung is going to market it, one of the main selling points is going to be that you can fold it up and it'll be pocketable. And so based on this, and the fact that Samsung has a bit of a reputation for giving just enough battery, there's a fair chance they'll do the same here, give it just enough battery so that at the point of buying it when it's brand new, it'll last a full day, but then 6 months of heavy use down the line, you'll probably be reaching for the charger at 6 PM. Whilst I welcome a cheaper phone, I really think the Fold 2 needs to be an everything phone with pro users in mind, not a sleek looking mid-range phone with a cool foldable gimmick. Function over form, to put it another way. I would also add to this, as a third minor concern, that there is a rumor that Samsung's also going to put an S Pen inside of this thing, and I don't think this is a particularly smart move. The way I look at it is this: you could see Samsung customers as a Venn diagram. You've got people who want an S Pen in one circle and people who want a foldable in another circle. And already, both of these circles are fairly small. These are niche ones. But if Samsung makes one flexible phone and this also is an S Pen focused device, then they're catering primarily for just this tiny overlap here. For everyone else, you're just getting a smaller battery, a little bit extra cost, and yet another thing that's going to drain your battery. So that's the next Fold. It'll probably be announced March to April next year, but I'll definitely have more info before then, so if you could subscribe, that would be amazing. I hope to see a phone that's more refined, faster, and more durable, so maybe this time we won't even need a dedicated video just to tell you how to take care of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.